Hey investor friends, I'm Michelle Markey and welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be taking you through the 2022 updates in my comprehensive guides of the Roth IRA, Traditional IRA, 401k, and retirement plan options for the self-employed and or small business owners. And if you also enjoy retirement investing, I'd love if you could please like and subscribe to my video and YouTube channel because it goes a long way with the YouTube algorithm and I greatly appreciate it. Thanks. To give you a quick overview before we dive into the details, for 2022, the Roth and Traditional IRA annual contribution limits are unchanged. So that means that if you're under 50, you can still contribute $6,000 in 2022. And if you're over 50, you can contribute $7,000. But then we see some changes with the 401k where employees under 50 can contribute $20,500 to either their elective pre-tax or Roth contributions in their 401k, or if you're over 50, you can contribute elective contributions of $27,000. And both of these amounts are up by $1,000 compared to 2021, where employees that are under 50 could contribute only up to $19,500 and those over 50 contributed $26,000. So that's one of the bigger changes, as well as the total limit for the 401k has actually increased by a total of $3,000. So for those under 50, it went from $58,000 in 2021 to $61,000 in 2022. And then for those over 50, it went from $64,500 to $67,500. So those were some of the main updates. And I worked really hard to put together the following comprehensive guides, but I'm not a professional financial advisor. So please definitely check with one or a tax planner if you have any questions about any of what I'm talking about today, as this is just for educational and entertainment purposes only. Saving and investing toward retirement is a goal that has been instilled in me from my family members, and over time I became very passionate about saving as much as I could toward retirement, and also encouraging my family, friends, and you, my YouTube audience, to save and invest as much as you can toward retirement, because it's never too early to start saving up for retirement, and you never know what curveballs life throws at you. So I'd rather err on the side of being more financially secure than being financially insecure, because it's kind of sad that many people do not have enough saved up for retirement. So I knew that I never wanted to end up in that kind of position. So as soon as I could afford it, I started contributing to my Roth IRA as a teenager. And then when I got my first real life job, I could contribute to my 401k. And even though I didn't contribute the maximum amounts in the early days, as soon as I could afford to max out my retirement investment accounts, I started doing that, including a health savings account, which you can learn about in one of my videos that I highly recommend everybody get an HSA if you feel like a high deductible health plan is right for you. But first I'll talk about individual retirement accounts, which are also known as IRAs, and they're either in the form of the after-tax Roth or the pre-tax Traditional IRA. When it comes to determining which IRA is right for you, you have to decide if you'd rather have the tax break later with the Roth IRA or the tax break now with a Traditional IRA. And you can mix and match your contributions between both types of accounts as long as it doesn't exceed the annual limits. And also just keep in mind that you have usually up until April 15 of the following year to make the previous year's contributions. So if you still wanted to contribute for 2021, you have until April 15 of 2022 to be able to contribute for the previous year. So just keep this in mind, that you have a little bit of an extended timeline to make sure you still get in your contributions for the previous tax year if you're interested in doing that. And then with a Roth IRA, I'll go through that first. And so if you want to contribute to that, you would pay taxes while you are currently in a lower income tax bracket, and then enjoy tax-free withdrawals during retirement, and you grow contributions and earnings tax-free. And when it comes to eligibility, you must contribute from earned income or taxable compensation, such as your salaries and wages or self-employment income. And income limits of modified adjusted gross income or MAGI apply, and you can contribute your max yearly amount if your MAGI as a single tax filer or head of household is less than $129,000. but it phases out between 129K to 144K, after which no more is allowed. And there's other phase outs for married couples, so feel free to check those separately. And then as far as contributions are concerned, you have after-tax contributions of up to $6,000 if you're under 50 or up to $7,000 if you're over 50. And your contributions are not tax deductible because you made the contribution with income that was already taxed. And you can invest in index and mutual funds, domestic and foreign stocks, ETFs, US treasuries, bonds, options, futures, real estate investment trusts, CDs, and probably more. And keep in mind that the total contributions per year across both a Roth IRA and traditional IRA cannot exceed $6,000 or $7,000 or 100% of your compensation, whichever is less. And you can roll over a Roth 401k to a Roth IRA, and you have no required minimum distributions, which I'm a big fan of. And distributions can avoid a 10% penalty in an IRA to Roth conversion if invested for 5 years. And if you're age 59 and a half or older, you have no taxes or penalties, and you can withdraw your original contributions anytime without tax penalty, but distributions of earnings are only tax-free if the initial contributions were made at least 5 years ago and you're either 59 and a half, disabled, or buying your first home with up to $10,000 max. Otherwise, there's a 10% penalty and you might owe income tax. And then moving on to the traditional IRA, where you get the tax break now, you don't pay taxes on contributions and earnings now if you are in a higher tax bracket, but you pay ordinary income tax on distributions during retirement. And for eligibility, you must contribute from earned income or taxable compensation, such as your salaries, wages, or self-employment income. And unlike the Roth, there are no income limits in order to contribute to an IRA, but tax deductions on contributions may be phased out or may not be allowed if you also have a workplace retirement plan such as a 401k. And for contributions, you can do pre-tax up to $6,000 if you're under 50 or up to $7,000 if you're over 50. And as noted above, phase-outs apply on tax deductions depending on your MAGI and if you have a 401k or other retirement plan at work. And you can generally invest in also index and mutual funds, domestic and foreign stocks, ETFs, US treasuries, bonds, options, futures, REITs, and CDs the same way like you can with your Roth IRA. And you can convert your traditional to a Roth IRA, also known as a backdoor Roth IRA, which is a great option if your MAGI is too high for a regular Roth IRA, and the converted amount will be taxed at your ordinary income level. And then you can roll over a 401k with pre-tax dollars to a traditional IRA. And unlike a Roth IRA, you have a required minimum distribution or RMD, and that applies if you're age 72 and above. But if you have earned income at any age, you can still contribute to either traditional and or Roth IRAs. And with RMD, there's a steep penalty of 50% of the amount that's not taken on time. So if you have a traditional IRA, you're going to want to make sure you take your required minimum distribution before the deadline. And if you're age 59 and a half and older, you have no taxes or penalties. And for both Roth and traditional IRAs, the distributions before this age are subject to a 10% tax penalty unless you qualify for an exception, and excess contributions to either IRAs are taxed at 6% per year until the excess is corrected or taken out of the account. And so this is why I happen to be especially partial toward Roth IRAs, and I have several videos because Roth IRAs do not have required minimum distributions. So whatever you've contributed to it, as long as it's earned income at any age, you can continue to grow your contributions tax-free, and you can make withdrawals tax-free at any point you feel like when you're at the required minimum age. And I think that's wonderful to have the Roth IRA option, as it allows you to keep compounding your wealth and not be forced to take them out at a somewhat predefined schedule with the RMDs that you have to have with a traditional IRA, as well as both the normal pre-tax 401k and the Roth 401k, as I'll get into shortly. There could be a few options for employer-sponsored retirement plans in the workplace, and the one that's pretty common is the 401k, and there are other types related to the 401k that have somewhat different names, and there's also pensions, and the one I'll focus on for today is just the normal 401k, where for 2022, you can have defined contributions of up to $61,000 for those under 50 or $67,500 if you're over 50. And there are no guarantees for payouts during retirement, and there's no certainty that your money will be able to always grow. Investing is not guaranteed, so your balance can go up and down over time. And there are required minimum distributions or RMDs that apply to both the pre-tax and Roth 401k. And like I mentioned with the traditional IRA, there's a penalty of 50% of the amount that's not taken on time. So you're going to want to make sure you take any RMDs before the deadline with the 401k. And then your contributions as an employee are either pre-tax and or a Roth elective deferrals up to $20,500 if you're under 50 or up to $27,000 if you're over 50. And a few plans may allow for after tax, which is different from Roth contributions, up to the max 401k limit. So like up to $61,000 if you're under 50, for example. And then the contributions as employers could choose to match employees' contributions up to $40,500, but they don't have to necessarily. For example, an employer could match 1-to-1, as in if an employee contributes 5% of salary, the employer also contributes 5% of salary, and some employers do not match or contribute anything. And then what you can invest in is usually a limited number of mutual funds or fixed income cash type funds, and some might allow investing in individual stocks or ETFs and more, but you have to check with each type of plan. And you're allowed to loan from a 401k, and you pay taxes and 10% penalties on any distributions before age 59 and a half, with few exceptions. And 401ks allow employee contribution deductions from yearly taxable income. And many employers opt to provide 401k plans over pension plans because there's less financial commitment on the employer to contribute to their employees' retirement plans, and total yearly contributions cannot exceed 100% of an employee's salary. And if you do a conversion of a 401k to a Roth IRA, that's known as a mega backdoor Roth IRA. And this is because you have the potential to roll over extra after-tax non-Roth contributions, and you have 401k contribution maximums that apply per person, not per plan, if you happen to have multiple 401k opportunities. And you could pause the video if you'd like to learn more about pensions, and I did the research on them a while ago, so I just included them, but I'm not going to go into detail today on them. And I actually just wanted to make one more note with regard to 401ks and some potential changes that there might be with mega backdoor Roth IRA conversions. And Congress is deciding if there will be changes to what types of contributions are allowed to 401ks that may be allowed to convert or not convert into a Roth IRA in the future. And so right now with 401ks, you have three main types of contributions that you can make, which include primarily your elective deferrals of either pre-tax or Roth contributions. And I used to think of Roth contributions as after tax, but it turns out there's actually another kind of after tax, which is not a Roth type of contribution to a 401k. So I know that's kind of confusing, but you usually have your normal elective contributions of either pre-tax or Roth up to the $20,500 if you're under 50. And then you could add after tax or other kinds of contributions that might go into the normal kind of 401k, so not a Roth 401k. And then those would be one way that some people, especially high net worth individuals or those who have high salaries, might be able to then do a mega backdoor Roth conversion some of the time. But it turns out that a lot of 401k plans don't have this, as maybe only 20% of 401k plans even allow for these extra after-tax contributions. So just be aware of some of that and how there could be potential law changes that could affect if you can still contribute after-tax contributions in a 401k, but just make sure you know what might be some of the rules in case you might want to contribute either more or less to your 401ks in the future. And then for those of you who are self-employed or are small business owners, you have a few retirement plan options, and I'll briefly go over the solo 401k, the SEP IRA, and the simple IRA. And for the solo 401k, it's a lot like the typical employer-sponsored 401k, but I think you get way more options because you can really operate this in a self-directed manner. So I think it's the best of both worlds, where you can max out the most amount of retirement investments if you have a solo 401k. And with that, you can do up to a max of $61,000 for those of you under 50, or $67,500 if you're over 50. And it means that you're self-employed with no employees except for a spouse that's also in the business. And as an employee, you can contribute pre-tax or Roth up to $20,500 if you're under 50, or up to $27,000 if you're over 50 in 2022. And then your contributions as an employer or your business is up to $40,500 from non-elective contributions up to 25% of your compensation or net self-employment income, which is your net profit subtracting half of your self-employment tax and yourself as employee plan contributions. And you would use a total compensation limit of $305,000. So make sure you understand if you want to do more contributions aside from just what you would contribute to your 401k as an employee of your business. And then with SEP IRA, it's a simplified employee pension individual retirement account, and that's up to a max of $61,000. And it's for a small business with very few employees. And your contributions as an employee are not applicable, but the contributions are 100% vested, and there's no catch-up contribution and no Roth option. And for a self-employed individual, contributions are limited to 25% of your net earnings from self-employment, and not including contributions for yourself, up to $61,000 for 2022. And then for a simple IRA, which is a savings incentive match plan for employees' individual retirement account, this is up to a max of $14,000 for those under 50 and up to $17,000 for those over 50. And it's for self-employed or small business with 100 or less employees. And so you can contribute as an employee pre-tax up to $14,000 if under 50 and up to $17,000 if over 50, and there's no Roth option. And then the contributions as an employer work that there's a match of employees' contributions dollar for dollar up to 3% of employee salary, or they can contribute a non-elective 2% of employee salary, and there's a compensation limit of $305,000. And you can pause the video to go through the remaining details that I included on this slide, which is important to know for those of you who might be in this position and want to know as much as possible before you decide to open this type of account for you. And to illustrate the power of compounding, if you're able to max out your retirement investment account contributions every year and compound the contributions at the stock market's average rate of return of 7% per year, and so if you contribute with a Roth IRA $6,000 and a 401k $20,500, and with an HSA $3,650 in 2022, that's a total of $30,150. So if you compound that much every year, you will reach $1 million after 18 years, $2 million after 25 years, and $3 million after 30 years. So I don't know about you, but that sounds fantastic to me. And so those are all my retirement investment stories, and I'm sticking with them. And if you enjoyed this video or learned something, please like and subscribe. And I wish you well on your journey to retirement investing. Till next time.